Hello guys and welcome back. With the NHL trade deadline just a week away, I wanted to make some bold predictions for the deadline this year that I think could happen, could be realistic, and would be pretty nuts. But what are my bold predictions for the deadline this year? What crazy things could happen over the next week? Well, make sure you watch till the end for all of my picks and hit that subscribe button if you're new for all of the trade deadline content as we lead up to the deadline stream in just a few days. Now, in today's video, we're going to start with a pretty good baseline of spiciness and then work our way to the spiciest bold predictions of them all. Now, getting us started with the first bold prediction of the trade deadline. And number one, I'm going to say that we're going to have multiple three-team trades. Now, this is something that we've already seen in the Chris Tanev deal with the Stars, Flames, and Devils all work together to make a trade happen. But I don't think it's going to be the last and nearly the last one. With how many teams are cap-strapped, I could see a ton of deals involving a third-team broker to involve some salary, get off the books, and use their salary in the right way, bring in a pick, whatever they want to do. I could see this in the Sean Walker trade that we eventually see. I could see it in the Pavel Buchnevich trade, perhaps. Teams are going to have to get creative, and three-team trades are one of the best ways to do it. And I'm just going to go on a limb here as well. We might see the typical three-team trade where a third team comes in and retains some salary, gets a pick, whatever. I think on deadline day, we will see one humongous three-team trade where every single team involved gets some type of substantial piece, a prospect, a player, a pick, whatever it might be, and absolutely lights the NHL world on fire. Now going on to my second bold prediction of the day. This is one that might be a little bit controversial, and I might have to define what I mean by this. But for number two, I don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs will make any major moves. Now, I could see them making a move on deadline day. Maybe they trade for a fourth liner or a bottom pair type D. But I just don't get the feeling that Brad Treliving is wanting to make a huge splash. You also look at their pick situation, and we already know that Toronto does not want to trade their first round pick under really any circumstances, unless it was an absolute no-brainer move. But you also look at the pick situation with them not having potentially a 2025 first, without having all of their second rounders over the next 3 seasons, and it would have to be a pick centered around a Nick Robertson or something, which I also don't know how much Toronto wants to do that this year. I think we could see maybe a bigger deal in the offseason, but something about this Leafs front office tells me they'll kind of stand pat at this year's deadline. Now, if we're up to me, any year that Austin Matthews is doing what he's doing, you have to go for it. I think a second pair D, a Chris Tanev, would have been perfect, but they obviously lost out on that. I think the Leafs disagree with me, though, and are going to have a boring deadline this year. Now, let's go into the third bold prediction of the mix here, and this one is one of the more interesting ones, and not something that I feel a lot of people are talking about. We've already seen the Zadorov and Elias Lindholm deals, but to me, for my third bold prediction, I don't think the Vancouver Canucks are done whatsoever. In fact, I could see them making another major move. Maybe not on the level of a Lindholm deal, but a pretty close one. We were kind of getting some word that they might want to bring back a Chris Tanev this year, but of course that didn't end up happening. But I thought that type of mix could have been really interesting on Vancouver's defense. And I don't think it's out of the question that they could trade for another D. I could see a situation where Nick Seeler is a pretty perfect fit for them, a great sturdy defensive D who's smart, who's consistent, and could work off play well. And I think for Vancouver, it might not be up to a first round pick level of giving up, but I do think we'll see the Canucks make another major move, especially on that defense, and improve one last time. And even though they don't have their first round or second round pick in this year's draft, they could move a couple of those picks maybe in the next couple of drafts perhaps. And I think for Vancouver, they have the options to do it. It doesn't really feel like Zadorov has been the savior of the defense that Vancouver maybe planned him to be. But I think if they add another D, if they have Zadorov still on that third pair or have him as a seventh D, I mean, to me, Vancouver could be in the perfect spot defensively, or maybe at least in a much better position. And if Nick Seeler is the guy, he would be pretty solid in my opinion there. Now going on to my fourth bold prediction of the video, and this is one that I'm pretty confident in, especially with how the Pittsburgh Penguins have played as of recent. But for my fourth bold prediction, the Pittsburgh Penguins will not only not trade Jay Guentzel, they'll keep him, they will also be big buyers at this deadline. But to me, the guy that makes the most sense for the Pittsburgh Penguins to trade for is actually Vladimir Tarasenko of the Ottawa Senators, who I think could be maybe a trade package similar to Chris Tanev, maybe not as much, probably a second rounder and a okay prospect, and that's it for Tarasenko. But I still think the Sens are open to trade for him. We've heard a lot more chatter recently about a Tarasenko trade happening, and I think he'll want to go to a contender. He'll want to go to somewhere where he can be in a great position to win. And you can see this year, he's been great offensively, 38 points, 55 games. He might not be the power play answer they're looking for. I think he has 7 power play points this year, but this is still a guy that can work off his teammates well and bring some juice to that top 6. And once Guentzel is back, bring a lot more stability within it. And that to me is huge. You look at their forward group right now, and obviously they have injuries to Jay Guentzel and Brian Rust, but at the same time, once those guys come back, to me, that top 6 would be pretty lethal. You could have top 6 forwards in Rust and Guentzel coming back. Maybe you could bump down Raquel to where maybe he probably should be, maybe on a third line, perhaps. For Pittsburgh, it would give them a lot more options this year, and a 5-on-5 scorer too that I think would work well with that team. And as we mentioned with the teams making 3-team trades, I can see the Penguins in a Tarasenko deal doing the same thing, putting Tarasenko down to a really good cap hit and maybe even going for another player on top of that. Do not be surprised if the Penguins, still with these Crosby years, go for it again. And I think Kyle Dubas realizes he might have to do it. Now let's go into my 5th bold prediction of the day, and actually going on to one of, if not the biggest trade piece in this year's deadline, and that is Pavel Buchnevich. And there's a lot of different places that I think Buchnevich could end up. I think Carolina makes a lot of sense. We've heard a lot about maybe a team like Edmonton going after a winger. There are a lot of options out there, but this bold prediction is fascinating, and to me is an idea that I've always just been entranced with. What if the Rangers end up trading for Buchnevich back? It would be absolutely wild, I know, especially with how much they got robbed in their first trade involving Buchnevich, but to bring in Buchnevich with this Rangers team, he could be the missing link for that Rangers top 6, and to me, they still need a right winger. They still need somebody to fix that side, and Buchnevich would be one heck of an ad. You can see what he's been able to do over the past few years, above a point per game in 2022 and 2023, and this year with St. Louis, 48 points, 57 games, and still chugging along at a great rate and an efficient rate too. And to me, for the Rangers, they need some 5-on-5 play. They need some sturdiness. I think Buchnevich could be really interesting in that top 6. And of course, he already has experience playing in MSG. Could be really interesting if the Rangers go for it. And again, just like with the Pittsburgh Penguins and potentially adding Tarasenko, to me with Buchnevich, it creates a Rangers lineup that is so much more diverse. You could have him on the first line with Kreider and Zibanejad, bump Capo Kakko down to the third line, which is probably where he should end up being, and you're still able to keep that awesome second line of Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. To me, it would be the best case scenario, and I guess the Rangers are looking for a third line center too, but to me, Buchnevich would be perfect. The only problem for the Rangers is just how much it would cost. I could see the Blues asking for a first-round pick and maybe a Brennan Othmann type of player, which I think for the Rangers would be a definite hard pill to swallow. But at the same time, I could see Buchnevich wanting to stay long-term in New York unless there is some contention there that we don't know about. And if he does, you might have to give up that type of prospect package. This is a Rangers team that, even though their recent winning streak and solid play, I still am not fully convinced we'll be able to get it done in the playoffs. But if they add a big piece like Buchnevich on that forward group, it just makes the entire lineup way more diverse, and to me gives them a way better chance at a Stanley Cup. But there could be a lot of consequences for the Rangers if they don't trade for him. If he goes to the Canes and he's on that first line with Svechnikov and Aho, and you're able to bump down a Natchez and a Jarvis out of the second and third line, to me, that's exactly also what the Carolina Hurricanes could need, some juice into that forward group. And to me, having him go to the divisional rival, having him go to any other team in the East would be a massive mistake. For the Rangers, best case scenario is they trade for him or he doesn't get traded. But I think for the Rangers, it would be such a good fit, such a perfect fit, that you have to at least try. Now let's go on to my 5th and penultimate bold prediction for this year's deadline. We still got one more to go after this, but to me, this is one that I could see kind of happening. I honestly, especially with some of the trades we've already seen, I could see this coming to fruition. And number 5, I think this might be a little bit of a boring trade deadline. And what I mean by that is trade deadline day. It kind of feels, and Jeff Merrick's also talked about this, it kind of feels like we might see a lot of the trades happen before deadline day appears. This weekend or over the next few days, we'll probably see some pretty major stuff. And I could see some of these major trades and some of the major deals that I've talked about here happening over the next few days. But my 5th bold prediction is that this year's deadline day will be boring. We've already seen some major trades, of course, with Chris Tanev. You've also got the Sean Monahan deal. You got Elias Lindholm as well. All of these guys have already been dealt, and all these guys were looked at as major pieces at this deadline to really carry it in a big way. And we've already seen all of them dealt. Now, this hasn't stopped deadlines in the past from working out well, because last year we had a ton of trades before the deadline, and it was still pretty okay. But I feel like this year already started out with less options and less really electrifying options either. And unless we somehow have Buchnevich waiting until deadline day or a few other players, I think the actual deadline day itself might be disappointing here. In saying that, I'll be streaming the NHL trade deadline on this channel, so please join. But now going on to my sixth and final bold prediction at this year's deadline. This is a pretty spicy one, but I also think even though they got in the big win recently versus San Jose, I think their season is trending in the wrong direction, and they might actually look to retool at this year's deadline. At number 6, I think the New Jersey Devils will end up being sellers at this year's deadline. Now, they don't have a ton of assets that are really expiring or really have much value. The big one, though, is Tyler Toffoli, who needs a new contract after this season and could get a pretty heavy haul for NJ. He makes $4.25 on the cap. He has no trade protection whatsoever, so he'd be incredibly easy to trade. And also considering what he has been for New Jersey, he's been a solid scorer, but defensively hasn't been what they've needed. And I think they could kind of rejuvenate that lineup a little bit for next year if they kind of make sense of all of it. Now, they are going to fire Lindy Ruff, which they should have done already. To me, I don't think New Jersey is going to make the playoffs this year, so it might be better if they just retool, get some picks for from this deadline, and potentially use those picks to add at the draft or in free agency, whatever they want to end up doing. I could see New Jersey kind of going in a offseason retool mode where they kind of revamp a little bit of that middle six, revamp a little bit of that team, and defensively bring in some more competent players. And I could see Toffoli being a big reason for that. I really don't see him staying in New Jersey after this year. It kind of feels like a fit that, although it's produced some good statistics, hasn't produced much winning. And I could see the Devils, even if they aren't going in true sell mode, trading Toffoli in the end and getting some pretty good value back. To me, I think of how consistent Toffoli has been as a scorer, you could easily get a first-round pick for him, and I think that's what the New Jersey Devils could be looking for, and of course, could package that in a deal for a defenseman or whatever they want at the draft this year. One team that I actually like a lot in a potential Toffoli deal is the LA Kings, who could add maybe on that right wing, on that second line, maybe even bumping a player like Moore down, or at least giving them some more flexibility throughout all four lines. And I could see this being the situation where Arthur Kaliev is dealt. He's obviously been in training rooms a lot over the past month and needs a change of scenery. Now, he's not the amazing defensive player that New Jersey needs, but I think he could be really interesting in a middle six role and potentially a first round pick on top of that. I don't know how it would look like, but I think LA could stand to have an upgrade, and I think Toffoli going back to his former team will be really interesting. But that is it for my bold predictions at this year's deadline. I want to know in the comments down below, what do you guys agree and disagree with my list? And I want to know as well your bold predictions in the comments. What do you think is going to happen? What big trades? What do you think is going to happen with your favorite NHL team? Let us know all your thoughts down below. And also let us know, is there one player out there that nobody's really talking about that you could see being dealt at the deadline this year? I want to know all your thoughts down below. Of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you guys haven't already, and share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Get the bold predictions out there, folks. And of course, I appreciate all your guys' support. Also, if you want to watch more videos on the channel here, click on this card all the way for more ranking content right in one playlist. And I will see you in the next one. I hope you guys have a great hockey day. Drink some water, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.